objective standpoint or as a social condition, what is it that we believe is valuable? What do we hold dear? And once we sort of understand what it is that we value, we can then sort of formulate our conception of a topic around that value. And we'll talk more about the specifics of Lincoln-Douglas debate moving forward, but just for our purposes here, it's important to understand that Lincoln-Douglas gives us sort of the first taste of an idea. How can we sort of move forward with a basic conception of what is the right or wrong or what really appeals to our sensibilities on a topic before we can then move on to formulate it into more specific actions. Next, we have policy debate. Policy debate, of course, is the oldest form of debate that we do, but it also forms a much more technical aspect. Policy debate, within this way of thinking, they take sort of the philosophical framework that's been given to them by Lincoln-Douglas, and they start to develop policy prescriptions. These are detailed plans for how to actually implement an idea once we've determined from the Lincoln-Douglas debaters that there is a value to the topic, that there is something we as individuals or as a society that we have decided we want to focus on, that we want to make some sort of improvement that based on those values. So the policy people can start to get into the details, get into some of the technical aspects, and formulate a proposal. Next, we have congressional debate. And this is where, and really in the real world, this is, I think, the most obvious, because what happens when Congress debates an issue? They're looking to create a legal proposal, okay? And so we take the ideas, the value framework that has been created by Lincoln-Douglas, and then the policy prescriptions with the details that the policy debaters have considered, and now it's going to be fashioned into legislation. How can this actually be implemented by law? And so the congressional debaters are going to hash that out and look at the way that those laws will impact society, whether the impacts to the society are more beneficial than they cost, those sorts of things. Then, once Congress has decided on a piece of legislation, that has to be sold to the public, and that's where we go to public forum. Public forum is kind of like a cable news debate. In fact, that's exactly what it was designed to emulate. And so within this way of thinking about debate, we take the topics that have been proposed, we've understood the values, we've delved into the policy details, and we've created legislation to deal with some sort of issue. And now the public forum debaters are presenting to the public what the options are, and then trying to get the public on board. We also have another debate event, which is called World School Debate. World School Debate sort of doesn't fit within this way of thinking because it actually comes to us not from within the United States. It actually comes from Great Britain. And so it sort of is, it has its own sort of methodology, it has its own sort of philosophy, and deals with topics in a slightly different way. But that way is still valuable because there's definitely room for an alternative perspective which brings in more diversity. So let's get into the specifics of each debate event. First, we're going to talk about Lincoln-Douglas. Lincoln-Douglas is a one-on-one style of debate that, as we said before, focuses on the values of individuals and society. This is a much more philosophical debate than many of the other events. You have topics that ask you questions about what should or what ought to happen in a given scenario. It asks about our morality. It asks about justice and those sorts of questions. the current debate topic is asking, in fact, about mandatory voting. And so the Lincoln Douglas debaters are going to consider, well, what is the important sort of bedrock concept of voting? What is it about elections that we really care about? Is it democracy? Do we debate about democracy and what role elections play in the development of a democratic state? These are important questions for Lincoln Douglas debaters to answer. The type of debater and how you might steer a particular student into a debate event is going to play a role in sort of how we conceptualize each of the event. You want to look at their personalities. When I look for Lincoln Douglas debaters, I'm looking for very thoughtful students, maybe not the most outgoing at first, the students that spend a lot of time sort of individually thinking, have maybe some of those deeper conversations, they're self-reflective. This is the type of student that I'm looking for in Lincoln Douglas. And because it is a one-on-one style debate, you don't have a partner to deal with. And so this must be an individually motivated student. And if you're the kind of coach that really likes the one-on-one kind of coaching that we sometimes get in debate, Lincoln Douglas is going to be really your cup of tea. So when you actually debate in Lincoln Douglas, the first thing that you want to do is, of course, look for the value. All right, we write cases that are formed around a value, and in the debate round, you'll actually hear the debaters on both sides, the affirmative and the negative. They will begin their cases perhaps by defining terms and maybe some sort of introduction, but then the centerpiece of the beginning of their case is going to be the value. They might tell you that we should value justice. And then they're going to define justice. They're going to tell you that justice means that each person gets his or her own due. That would be from Aristotle. Or they might tell you that justice means fairness. And they'll tell you that that comes from a guy named Rawls. And so by understanding first our definition of justice, we can then go ahead and start building the case for why the judge should actually care that justice is not only important, but our conception of justice is the right one and the way that we should be viewing this topic. So we look at justice. And then justice for whom? Are we talking about justice for everyone? Are we talking about justice for certain individuals? Are we talking about justice sort of in a more general sense for society? These are important concepts that we have to sort of deal with here at the beginning of Lincoln Douglas. We then move on to what's called the value criterion. The value criterion is like a measuring stick. This is how we know that we're achieving whatever our value is. If it is in fact justice, then we need to be able to say that if our case proves that such and such is the case, then we have achieved justice. And so the value criterion is really important as that sort of measuring stick. We then move on to the contentions. And this is where most of the other debates sort of have their meat and potatoes. These are the distinct arguments for their side. And in Lincoln Douglas, there's no set number of arguments that you must have, but a general sense on the affirmative side, you're looking for about 3 to 4 arguments or contentions that sort of directly help us prove that our framework is appropriate, that if we're talking about justice, our contentions are all going to sort of wrap back up into this concept of the affirmative side is achieving justice through our value criterion. On the negative side, you're going to have a slightly shorter case. The affirmative case, the affirmative constructive speech, is 6 minutes long. The negative constructive speech is 7 minutes long, but you have 2 tasks in that speech. You have to first present the negative case, but then you also have to begin to attack the affirmative case. The negative speaker only speaks twice during the debate. So it is really essential that the negative speaker get all of their initial attacks in on the affirmative right there in that first speech. So I generally tell my students to sort of plan on their negative case being between 3 and 3.5 minutes. That gives them another 3.5 to 4 minutes to deal with their opponent's case. After each side has presented their cases, there is a cross-examination, and that's after both the affirmative constructive and then again after the negative constructive. Now, the Lincoln-Douglas style of cross-examination is different than what you might see in other events. It's sort of a one-way questioning. After the affirmative constructive speech, the negative speaker will ask the affirmative speaker questions, and the affirmative speaker will answer. Then, after the negative constructive speech, the negative speaker will answer questions from the affirmative speaker. There's not a back and forth here. It's simply an ask and an answer after each of those speeches. After both constructive speeches and both cross-examinations, we move on to the affirmative rebuttal. And this is a 4-minute speech where the affirmative side gets to respond to what the negative began in their constructive speech. So it's 4 minutes to do two very important things, which is to start to refute the negative side and then support their own side based on the negative's attacks against their case. Then the negative side has a 6-minute rebuttal. And this is where the negative has to wrap up everything for their side. Their goal here is to re-attack the affirmative after the affirmative has had a chance to sort of repair their case, repair and respond to the affirmative attacks on the negative case, and then provide what are called voting issues. And this is where the negative side gets to tell the judge their belief about how the round went. They're supposed to then tell the judge, this is why I believe that I won, and this is why you should side with me. This will include something that we also call impact calculus. Okay, impact calculus is where we look at the consequences of each side and sort of weigh them. And the way that we weigh them in Lincoln-Douglas is through our values. If the impacts that each side have sort of explained weigh more heavily toward the negative side, the negative would say that we should prefer, the negative side, because the negative is going to achieve whatever their value is better than the affirmative achieves what their value is. And so we're weighing the two sides there. The affirmative then has the last word, and they have 3 minutes to sort of wrap things up, provide a summary, and then do the same thing with the weighing of the sides. And that's the end of the Lincoln-Douglas round. Next, we have policy. Policy debate is a 2 versus 2 style debate. This is the oldest style of debate, and it's also the longest debate that we have. It lasts for about an hour and a half. So the actual structure of policy debate is a little bit different than all of the others. You begin with the affirmative case, and it's an 8-minute speech. And the goal of the affirmative case is to lay out a plan. And this is based on whatever topic the policy debate is debating for the entire year. Each team is going to develop a case which includes very specific goals and ways of implementing their plan to achieve whatever goal is set about by the topic. So They're going to have all sorts of different parts of their plan. Their plan must include, first of all, a reason why the plan is even necessary. They have to list out the harms that are being caused in the status quo that need to be solved. They're going to then lay out an inherency problem. So a reason why the plan isn't already implemented, or a reason why their plan is different from what is already happening in the status quo. Then they're going to explain to you what the impacts will be. What is going to actually come about as a result of their plan? How do they solve their harms? And depending on the type of judge that they have, they might want to also include extra advantages. So not just does their plan solve the harms that they've explained, but also what else does it do that we can say sort of adds to the benefits of the plan. The negative side, their job is to not come up with necessarily an alternative, though they can. Their primary job is to just tell the judge why the affirmative shouldn't be done. Okay? They don't have to, the negative's job is not to explain why any affirmative shouldn't be done, but simply why this affirmative shouldn't be done. Which is a little bit different than you might see in Lincoln Douglas or public forum. The goal is not to simply say that the negative side of the topic is better, but simply to say that this particular way of answering the topic is inappropriate. And so the negative is going to come up with all of their alternatives for, or their contradictions for why the affirmative is wrong. They're going to explain either the harms that the affirmative are laying out aren't harms, or they're not really as bad as what the affirmative is saying, or that they're caused by something other than the topic. Then they're going to attack the plan itself, and they're going to explain why the affirmative specific plan either won't achieve the harms, won't fix the harms that they are claiming, or that they're going to cause other harms that are worse than the harms they think that they're solving. And so on the negative side, it's important to sort of understand all the elements that the affirmative has dealt with, so you can create a strategy for how you deal with those different elements in your rebuttal. The negative should also, with a policymaker type of judge, also look at disadvantages. Okay, not just the affirmative doesn't achieve their plan, or that they don't solve the harms that they claim, but also what other bad things might result, and then be able to weigh those against the advantages that the affirmative has claimed in their case. And this goes back and forth each side. Each partner has their own individual time to speak. There's the cross-examination period for each of the debaters. And this goes on throughout the debate until they reach sort of the end. And they do the same thing as we did in Lincoln Douglas, where you have impact calculus and you have a weighing of the sides. And then the judge's job is to decide which side did the better job of convincing them of either the plan's possibilities for success or its failure. And that's a policy debate. Next, we have Congress. Congress is another sort of individual event. You don't have a partner, but unlike Lincoln Douglas, where there's only two competitors in the room at a time, Congress, you have an entire group of debaters. And it's a little bit more of a battle royale rather than a structured, side versus side kind of debate. In congressional debate, your debater will have bills that they have considered beforehand, that they have been able to research and decide, how they want to either support or negate the particular legislation. And then when they go into round, they're going to be able to actually stand up and pretend that they are in an actual congressional debate. And the really interesting thing about congressional debate is how it allows students a little bit of freedom to be theatrical. They get to actually take on a persona and try to act in that professional manner as a legislator. And so you go to a tournament, they go into their chamber, and they'll have 15 to 20 other representatives there. And one of the students will act as a presiding officer, and then they will begin their debate. And so somebody will introduce a piece of legislation and then give a sort of introductory speech where they lay out the primary rationale as sort of a sponsor of the legislation, why they want to put forward this legislation and why it's important. Then it'll go back and forth from negative to affirmative as each side gets their opportunity to speak on the bill. The speeches are 3 minutes long, and after each speech is a question period. After the first affirmative and first negative speech, there's a 2-minute cross-examination period, and then after every subsequent speech, there's a 1-minute question time. There's nothing that requires a student to pick one side or the other of the bill, though it is a good practice for students to be prepared to speak on both sides of each bill so the chamber can be fairly balanced. It's also possible that a student, if they notice that the chamber is unbalanced, maybe heavily toward the affirmative side of the bill, that they can switch sides from what they had planned on. But it's important to sort of convince the judge that you didn't switch sides just for convenience, but you switch sides within the framework of the role play. So maybe there was an argument that they can latch onto that says the other side really got my attention here. They've convinced me that this bill is really, if they're switching to the next side, that this bill is really harmful and that we shouldn't be passing this bill at least until changes are made. And so you can get up and give a speech and say, I've changed my mind and here's why. And so that's a possibility. There's no limitation for how many speeches each individual debater gives on a particular bill. Usually time-wise, each debater will get 1 to 2 chances to speak on a particular piece of legislation. It is possible for some of the debaters to get more time, and I usually encourage my debaters to speak as often as possible, as long as they're bringing up new ideas and they're advancing the debate to show that they're engaged, that they're participating, and that they're actually listening and working with what their competitors have been speaking with. It's not really a good idea for debaters to get up and simply read off of a piece of paper or provide a pre-memorized speech, especially if the debate has been going on for half an hour and then they're finally able to get recognized, and then they get up and they give a speech that just reiterates points that have already been made by their competitors, and they may do it in a well-polished way, but this is debate and not speech. So it's really important that they show the judge that they have been participating actively in the debate and that they can adapt as they go through. So at the end, the round is decided not by a win or a loss, but by a ranking. So the judge's job is to rank the congressional debaters on how well they performed in the round. And so generally the top 8 debaters will be placed by the judge. Next, we have public forum debate. And as I said before, public forum debate is sort of a cable news style of back and forth that you would see on CNN or on Fox or MSNBC, where you have 2 sides sort of debating a current event style topic. Public forum topics change each month, and the idea here is to keep them current and to change them up so the arguments are always fresh and you have new ideas being thrown around. This is also a partner style of debate. So you have a 2 versus 2 in a round with the judge. This debate is much shorter than policy, even though some people think it sort of looks similar to policy. There are significant differences. Each of the initial speeches are only 4 minutes long. And you're not creating a plan in public forum. Your goal is simply to provide some clear, understandable rationales for why either the affirmative or the negative side of the debate is in the public's interest. So you're looking for 2 to 3 arguments, perhaps, or 2 arguments with some subpoints on each side. Another unusual aspect to public forum is that it doesn't follow the same AF-neg formula as the other debate events all of the time. It's actually dependent upon a coin flip at the beginning of the round. So public forum could start with the negative side, or it could start with the affirmative side, depending on which competitor won the coin flip. So when you construct your cases and when you're coaching your public forum debaters, they have to be prepared on the negative side to go first. And that does change the way that you sort of look at your different cases. And it also changes the burdens of each side. The burden in a debate event where the affirmative always goes first places the burden of proof on the affirmative, and then the negative simply has to say, why not AF? The affirmative has to say in a positive way, this is why you should accept the affirmative. The negative simply has to say a reason why the affirmative is inappropriate and attack the affirmative. In public forum, each side has a burden of proof. The negative doesn't get off on just saying why not AF. They have to positively say why neg. And that's an important part of the construction of their case. The cross-examination in public forum is also different. Unlike the other events, cross-examination in public forum goes both ways. You have each side able to ask and answer questions in each of the cross-examination time periods, and then at the end, the final cross-examination is where it's a 2-on-2, what's called grand crossfire, and this is where anyone can ask and anyone can answer questions, and it gets a little bit chaotic, but that sort of follows in the mold of what public forum is supposed to be. It's a very energetic style of debate. If you've ever watched dueling personalities on cable news, you'll understand why public forum is the way it is. And also, when you're looking for students that might fit in the public forum model, this is the sort of personality that you're going for. You're looking for the boisterous, you're looking for the gregarious, outgoing, and personable style of debaters. Finally, we have World School Debate. World School Debate is a totally different animal than the rest of them. World School Debate is, in practice, a 3 versus 3 style of debate. Each team actually can have up to 5 members and no fewer than 3, but only 3 of the 5 can debate at a given time. So in the actual World School Debate, the topics are a little bit less in-depth than what we see in some of the other debate events. They have less time to prepare. In fact, in a 4-round tournament, you'll generally have 2 debate topics that the students can prepare for ahead of time, usually a week or more, and then 2 that they get at the tournament, and they have just an hour to prepare on their own, usually in a library at the school, but they do not get the opportunity to have coaching during that period. And so there's a little bit of a development of just basic knowledge, the ability to adapt on the spot, and these are some important aspects to World School Debate. World School Debate also has no prep time, whereas Public Forum, Policy, and Lincoln Douglas all provide a couple of minutes of time for each of the debaters to use during the debate to prepare for the next speech. World School is a continuous debate that goes in a structure from the proposition or affirmative side to the opposition, back and forth in 8-minute speeches until you get to the last two speeches. And the proposition side has a 4-minute summary, and then the opposition has also a 4-minute summary. So there's no break in between. The entire round lasts for an hour. And then the judge's goal is to decide which side was the more convincing, and it's largely based on sort of the presentation of the debate as much as it is on the logic of the debate. Now, of course, this is still a debate event, so it's important for each side to actually try to win the arguments. But a big part of winning the arguments in World School debate is as much the ethos and pathos of the debate, as whereas logos is a much more common part of sort of Lincoln Douglas and policy debate. So those are our debate events. I'm now going to open it up for questions in the Google Meet. Thank you for listening.
Okay. So open it up for questions here.
Hi there. This is Mike Langford from Avon High School, and although I used to participate in debate back in the 1980s, showing my age, I've never been a coach before. So thank you for all the review and some of the new materials. So on Congress, I have used to be. We probably had one legislative docket that would last the entire season. And now I'm seeing some materials to suggest that there's a new legislative docket, perhaps as often as every month. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So a decision was made in July based on a proposal to try to make some changes to Congress that we would have a more limited docket of legislation that gets put out more frequently. And the rationale behind that was with a single docket of like 14, 15 bills for the whole season, students got sort of, some of them would get kind of bored. Some of them would, like write speeches that they would then just use every time on the bills. And there wasn't a whole lot of debating sometimes happening. And so the idea was to spur a little bit more of the sort of extemporaneous style that we're looking for by having fewer bills that are changed up.
Okay, well, that makes complete sense. So I've seen the September legislative docket. Does that mean that that will just be for meets? And I don't really think there are any, but just for meets that are in September? And then there'll be an October docket that will be provided in advance of all meets in October?
So that docket is going to be September, October, because I doubt that there's going to be any tournaments at the end of in September. There might be like sometimes Valpo does a fall Congress. Mary, I don't know if you can answer whether you're going to do that again or not.
Actually, I'm not sure. Kevin would be our answer guy there.
Okay, because that is a district thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So not really sure whether or not it will even be used in September. So we're just going to continue that for October. And then there will be a new docket for November. There will be another docket for December, and then one for January. And the one for January will be separate than the docket for the actual state tournament.
Okay. So as my students, it looks like our first meet's going to be October 10. So have them be using that September docket. We're probably safe to go. And then the way it used to be is that you wouldn't know which are there typically be 4 bills debated about an hour for each bill.
Yes.
Is that still the way that it is?
Yes. And each tournament will get to choose, which bills that they want to use at their tournament. Individual tournaments are also welcome to not use this docket if they would like to do their own legislation. The IHSFA can't make a tournament use our legislation. It's just there for convenience.
And when you say the tournament decides, do you mean that the director of the tournament decides, or the way it seemed to be when I used to participate was that we'd show up on that Saturday morning and we take a vote, meaning those in Congress, as to which four we want to use?
So the school that hosts, they will choose whatever their docket for that weekend is going to be.
Okay.
And then what the students get to do is determine the order that they debate it in.
And so how far in advance will we learn what four are going to be debated or argued at Congress on that particular Saturday?
We really like the tournaments to post what bills they're going to use, ahead of time, at least a week. Okay. And sometimes they do it much earlier than that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Trying to look at some questions in the chat here. Brianna Fox, you say your school doesn't have any debaters. Any suggestions on how to get started from scratch? Well, I'm not sure how to get started from scratch. I was sort of blessed that at Chesterton, when I started teaching here, I sort of got roped into coaching a very long-standing debate program. So the kids just sort of were already showing up for me. But I do a lot of recruiting on my own. I teach some freshman classes, and so when I find kids that I think would be good in debate, I sort of start strong arming them into joining the team. And sometimes I even find kids in the hall if I hear a student that's really giving it to one of their friends in the hallway. I'm like, hey, you've got quite a voice. You should join our program. So there's a lot of sort of one-on-one kind of recruitment that we do, and then to just sort of get them started, I do weekly meetings and individual work sessions. There is a lot of time commitment that goes into it, but a lot of programs, like Mary says, they start with Congress, and that's a good way to teach fundamentals. Chester, we don't do that because we sort of have a lot of momentum in the program. So and we have multiple coaches, so we try to get the kids into events that we want them to sort of stick with for a while, pretty early on. But especially if you're the only coach, it probably would make it a lot easier to sort of pick one that you think that well, and that the kids will be able to pick up pretty easily, and then they can sort of branch out from there once they get comfortable. Yes, Brian, you can. My primary event that I coach, like I coach both Lincoln Douglas and Public Forum currently. I have coached Congress in the past. I've coached World School, but I have a very robust Lincoln Douglas team, and you don't have to, like, I have freshmen that I bring right into Lincoln Douglas. We don't start with anything else with them. It's just we sort of do sometimes we do a little like personality profile kind of thing, and then sort of lay it out to them as like, what are you interested in? And the ones that say, I kind of want to do Lincoln Douglas, I grab them real quick and I start teaching them Lincoln Douglas, and we ignore the rest of it. So it is absolutely possible to jump right into Lincoln Douglas. And Lincoln Douglas, from my perspective, because it's sort of here, it's my baby. I think Lincoln Douglas requires a lot of time for students to get good at. So I like to be able to get them started as freshmen, because it's going to take them it's going to take them some time to not only get used to it, but to really be able to delve into the depth of argumentation that Lincoln Douglas requires. For resources, the NSDA has a resource package. There's some good YouTube videos on it. You're also like ask Lincoln Douglas coaches, and they're always happy to help you. I'm around. I'm always happy to provide any help that I can give you. I'll give you my email address if you want to ask me specific questions. I can also give you like specific literature and that sort of stuff. I actually teach a philosophy class, so I sort of cross shop a little between my Lincoln Douglas debaters and my philosophy class.
Yeah, that would be great. I would really appreciate the resources for both Lincoln Douglas and the philosophy, because I would like to incorporate those both as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll put my email in the chat box.
Okay. Yes, the NSDA has a lot there as well, and they also do topic analysis. If you have the NSDA resource package, whenever a new topic comes out, they do a good topic analysis on it.
Yeah, I have another question on Congress, if you don't mind.
Yeah, not a problem.
I know that in the extemp world, there are some parameters that as to how much outside research you can do. Basically, I understand there's kind of a lockdown on online services while you're at the school. Is it the same with Congress? I mean, should the students are they allowed to bring their phones, their laptops, do research during the actual Congress event?
So the IHSFA does not allow internet in round. So they can use their laptop. The internet has to be turned off. So we do similar to the way we do extemp. We have their files sort of organized ahead of time and sort of organized on their computer so they can pull up what they need.
Right. And you said in round, so a round ends, there's a 10-minute break. At that point, if they want to go do some quick research, that's okay?
Yeah, I don't think there's any rule against them using internet like when they're not in round.
Okay.
That's
and how is that?
That'll be based on availability of internet in whatever building they're in.
How's that monitored? Just the honor system or some other way?
So it's usually self-monitored. It used to be really easy because laptops like had a light on whether you were on Wi-Fi or not, but I don't think laptops do that anymore. So the only time when it's really been an issue is if another kid will see somebody like clearly searching on the internet. They'll tell a judge or a tournament official or something, and they'll investigate.
Well, in these virtual meets, that gets really tough, right?
We're not really sure how that's going to be policed yet, if at all.
Yeah.
I had one more question. Kind of building on what you just said. As far as the virtual meets go, do you think the one-on-one is going to be the most likely type of competition in the virtual world?
Well, they did nationals last year virtually, and it worked for public forum. It worked for policy. It worked for I'm pretty sure Congress also worked.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of figuring out like exactly how we're going to implement it, but all of the events will work. I am curious to see how World School is going to work, but that's its own thing. So anybody have any other questions to throw at me? All right, well, I'll stick around a little bit if anybody has anything else they want to shoot at me, but thanks for coming. I appreciate it, and please fill out the evaluation on your way out.
Hey, Josh, if you're sticking around for like 5 minutes, I'd like to ask you a few more questions.
Sure, not a problem.
So say I had some kids that I think would be really great for the Lincoln Douglas method style. So what's that look like one more time? So it's a one-on-one debate.
Yeah.
There's an affirmative. There's negative.
Yeah.
Do you get to choose which side you're on before the debate begins?
No, so it alternates. So they will debate both sides through the tournament, and it's usually just random how it's decided. So like we almost always use a computer program that sets the sides. So the computer just it does the matching, and then it'll put them on a side, and then each round they'll just flip from one to the other.
Okay, interesting. So so it's mainly about skill development and the ability to debate both sides.
Absolutely.
So, and are the topics, are they provided about 1 week in advance, you said?
So the Lincoln Douglas topics are they do them 2 months at a time.
Oh, okay, I see that on the September, October topics.
Yep. Yeah. So right now the Lincoln Douglas is about compulsory voting or mandatory voting.
Okay, mandatory voting.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And we always follow whatever the NSDA topic is. That's what Indiana does.
Within a like democratic framework or whatnot.
Yep.
Voting. So I'm a complete newbie here. I mean, I do a lot of Socratic seminars.
Yeah.
Do you think I could get my team up and going and have join a competition by October, November?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have freshman novices every year, and within 3 or 4 weeks they're ready to debate. They're going to be scared. They're not really going to understand what it's about. But the best way for them to learn it is just to get them into the round, and they're going to learn actually doing the debate far more than you can just teach them in a classroom.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So even if I have 1 or 2 kids, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be shooting you out an email. I'm really grateful for your workshop today.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Yep. All right, I'll definitely be sending you questions down the road.
All right.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.